And so the darkness returns. The light, the remains of a flickering candle. Long have I brought wisdom wrapped in my shroud. Now a return to bring depth to light and meaning to life. For first there was the darkness, and then there was the light. So it is they who cast the first circle that life follows death, and day follows night. So it's that time of the year again. So today I thought we'd talk a little bit about Halloween, or Samhain, the ancient fire festival of the Celts. So today I want to talk about Halloween, or more specifically Samhain, the ancient festival of the Celts. So the name Samhain is a Gaelic word, and so is more applicable to those Celts of Gaelic origin. So the Irish, the Scots, and those people from the Isle of Man. But the same festival was celebrated right throughout Britain and throughout the Celtic inhabited lands of Northern Europe. Now, the Brythonic Celts belong to a different linguistic branch to that of the Gaelic Celts. And so we have our own name for these festivals. And so in Wales, it's known as Calan Gaeth. Now the Cornish, they call it Calan Gaeaf. And in Brittany, they call it something very similar, Calan Gaeaf. And all of those names simply just mean the first day of winter. But to avoid confusion, we're just going to call it Samhain to refer to the festival that marks the end of summer and the beginning of the dark half of the year. So you might be thinking, well, if it marks beginning of the dark half of the year, why is it all the way up in November? Why is it not on the autumn equinox? I mean, it's at the autumn equinox when everything's even. I mean, that's what equinox means, right? So, daylight and nighttime, they're even. So why did the Celts not mark the dark half and the light half of the year at the time of the equinox? Well, the answer to that is that these festivals were held to mark the end of seasons. And they marked their seasons through the agricultural cycle. And the agricultural cycle doesn't align with the solar cycle. You see, there is a delay. So at the equinox, okay, so day and night are the same time, the same amount of hours in night and the same amount of hours in the day. But it takes a little while for the atmosphere to cool down in terms of the autumn equinox, and in the spring equinox, it takes a little while for the weather to warm up. And this is a natural delay. It just takes a while for the atmosphere to warm. So in terms of sowing seeds and bringing in the harvest, there were ideal times to do this. And these times did not line up with the solar cycle. And so the agricultural cycle was different to that of the solar cycle. It was the gods that controlled the agricultural cycle, and so they knew that if they followed the directions of their gods, then the gods would give them a bountiful harvest, and he would look after the livestock. So Samhain marked the end of the harvest and the end of the hunting season, and it also marked the time when they would bring their herds down from the mountains, down from their summer pastures, and bring them down to the lowlands for shelter through the winter. Samhain was a festival that marked a transitionary period through the year. Now, at Samhain, all the harvest, all the herds had been brought down, most of the outdoor work had been completed, and now focus could be returned to the home and more indoor activities. But this was more than just a marking of the seasons. You see, Samhain played a big role in their spiritual beliefs. Now, Samhain marked the death of the sun god, and the sun god would wander the underworld until his rebirth at Yule. And the Earth Mother, well, she would take on her aspect as the crone. So, maiden, mother, crone. So the death of the sun god indicated that the dark half of the year was now upon them. And so this marked the beginnings of the new year. It was the new year for the Celts because the cycle, whether it was the daily cycle or the yearly cycle, it always began with the darkness. And so, with the death at one day at sundown, a new day would begin in darkness. And so this was the same for the new year. As soon as the old year had ended with the harvesting of the crops, then a new year would begin in the darkness of winter. And there were 2 days in the year that were far more important than any other days in the year. And these days were called the Espridnos, which means spirit nights. And those days were the beginning of the new year, Samhain, and the beginning of summer, Beltane. And these Espridnos nights, well, the meaning's in the name. Espridnos, spirit nights. These were the nights when the veil between the material world and the other worlds was at its thinnest. And it was these nights of the year that it was the most optimal to communicate with the spirits and the ancestors, and to do works of divination, magic, and prophecy. So what happened on this spirit night and this festival of Samhain? Each house within the community would light a bonfire in celebration, but also to ensure they could keep the evil spirits away. You see, not all the spirits were the spirits of the ancestors. Some were evil, and they would bring darkness and evil upon the village. And they would use trickery and disguise themselves. And anyone unfortunate enough to find themselves coming across their path could have their souls damned for an eternity. And so this is a time when the ancestors would come visiting too, and they were welcomed into the houses and into the village with offerings in return for the ancestors bringing wisdom and knowledge that would help them throughout the following year. And so there we have it, Halloween, the Celtic New Year, a time for festivities, a time to celebrate the harvest, a time to celebrate the new year in, and a time to welcome the ancestors and work prophecy, divination and magic. Time of such significance to the ancient ancestors, and a time of such strong belief that still we celebrate it today. The meaning's not lost. It's changed a little over the years, but we are learning more and more about our culture every day. And so with that, if you've enjoyed today's content, then please think about subscribing and give us a thumbs up. And I hope you all have a really great Halloween, Samhain, whatever you want to call it. And I'll see you again very soon on the next one.